Do you have a dangerous mission that could determine the fate of humanity? Well, then who you gonna call? Task Force X or Guardians of the Galaxy? Both from the genius mind of James Gunn, but which is better? We're here to break down and settle the debate once and for all. Guardians vs. Suicide Squad. Spoilers ahead. Let's start with the reluctant leaders, Bloodsport and Star-Lord. First off, with Bloodsport, aka Robert Dubois, is, in Amanda Waller's words, a world-class marksman. But at the top is putting Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet, something that even Batman hasn't been able to manage. Then there's Star-Lord, Peter Quill, when we are first introduced to him as an orphan from Earth raised by Yondu and his crew of Ravagers, essentially space bandits for anyone who forgot. But that's only part of who he is. As we learn in Volume 2, he's actually part Celestial after finding his long-lost father, Ego. But that's for another video. Both have moments of carnage and levity. But if I had to choose one over the other, I'm going with Star-Lord. As much as I loved Bloodsport in James Gunn's reboot, the character is almost a copy of Peacemaker, a joke they even make in the movie.
He does exactly what I do, but better.
So for that reason, and the fact that Peter could handle an Infinity Stone without disintegrating because of his celestial DNA, Star-Lord wins. Here's the battle between the fan favorites, Gamora and Harley Quinn. Each has similar tragic backstories. Both are kidnapped by crazed villains, Joker and Thanos respectively, and trained to become murderous sidekicks. Gamora has a real character arc in Guardians of the Galaxy. We see her slowly start to let others into her life and what she's feeling, going so far as to actually form a romantic bond with Peter. We also see her true character with her interactions between her and her sister Nebula. While Harley Quinn doesn't have much of a story in James Gunn's Suicide Squad, she is featured in a lot of people's favorite scenes. Her amazing prison break is one of the most fun action scenes I have seen in a while, and her hilarious non-climactic murder of what we thought was the main villain, Presidente Sylvester Luna. Also, let's not forget her finally finding the purpose of Javelin's javelin. Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie, is one of the most unique characters in comic book movie history, and I don't mean this as a slight against Zoe Saldana's Gamora. So, because of her originality in the age of superhero movies, win Harley Quinn. Now for the strongest members of each group, Nanaeu, or as he is called in the comics, King Shark, and Groot. Both are voiced by famous action stars, Sylvester Stallone and Vin Diesel. And while Nanaeu barely has a grasp of the English language, he still knows more words than Groot. All we know of Nanaeu's backstory in the movie is that he is most likely the descendant of an ancient shark god. But what else would you want to know? It's a giant shark that can walk, talk, and eat people. That's good enough for me, but this is easy. Groot is the clear winner. Beside his one-word vocabulary, there is just a lot more depth to Groot's character in the movies, even just in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. The strong, tough comic relief of the groups, Drax and Peacemaker, are also both played by former WWE stars Dave Bautista and John Cena. Drax the Destroyer is the king of awkward one-liners. His social awareness is low, but his comedic timing is always spot on. He's also the only character I have ever seen fight a spaceship by jumping out of the back of his spaceship and tethering himself to it. That's definitely original. And also his magic ability to never wear a shirt but somehow never get cold. Peacemaker, on the other hand, is a giant man-child, also lacking social awareness. But hey, he is a good dancer. And as a side note, the title sequence for the Peacemaker series is truly a masterpiece. I am including the Peacemaker series on HBO Max, or is it just Max now, I guess, as part of the consideration, because it was made by James Gunn as well. So considering just how terrible of a childhood and a father he had, and the fact he had an explosive in his head, I think I can forgive Peacemaker for killing Rick Flag. Sorry, Rick. With all that in mind, I'm picking Peacemaker over Drax. There was just more overall depth to Peacemaker, whereas Drax has become more of just the comic relief. Polka Dot Man and Rocket Raccoon are the most insecure members of both groups, and they share similar tragic backstories. Both are the result of experimentation by mad scientists. For Abner Krill, the scientist just so happened to be his mom, who he sees everywhere. Literally. The space virus that his scientist mom infected him with causes him to break out in a polka dot rash that he must get rid of. But boy, do those polka dots do some serious damage. That's not to say Rocket isn't capable of equal carnage. I'm pretty sure he could create a bazooka out of a Lego set somehow. Rocket suffers from some of the same insecurity that Abner does, but instead of bottling up inside, he takes it out on those closest to him, which is something I think a lot of us can relate to. Rocket is another character that has gone on a real journey, from isolated and lonely to accepting the rest of the Guardians as family. Again, because of the depth of his character, even in Guardians Volume 1, I have to say Rocket is better. The leaders responsible for both groups, Nova Prime and Amanda Waller. Waller leads with an iron fist by implanting explosives into Task Force X's head, while Nova Prime takes more of a hands-off approach. Amanda Waller is ruthless, going so far as to threaten Bloodsport's 16-year-old daughter. Waller is willing to do whatever it takes to get the results she wants. It was on her orders that Peacemaker killed Rick Flag over the data about the US government's role in Project Starfish. And let's not forget, she is played by the incomparable Academy Award winner Viola Davis, an actress so good she was Michael Jordan's only choice to portray his mother in the recent movie Air. Nova Prime, on the other hand, is much more by the books. It's only because of her desperation that she employs the Guardians in protecting Xandar from Ronan the Accuser. Nova Prime is portrayed by another all-time great Academy Award winner Glenn Close. To me, this is another easy decision. Amanda Waller gets the win. This one's gonna be quick. The soundtracks. Gunn brought back a myriad of 60s and 70s songs into the mainstream with Guardians Volume 1. And while the music is great in Suicide Squad, the soundtrack for the Guardians movies is as perfect as you can get. So let's not drag it out. Easy win for Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, the villains of Suicide Squad and Guardians Volume 1. Starro vs. Ronan the Accuser. Both are powerful beings and are from other planets. But that's about where the similarities stop. Ronan, a Kree warrior, is one of the weaker MCU villains, and is routinely cited as an example of the MCU having simple villains for a while. And his motivations for villainy are never fully fleshed out, and instead he just feels like a bad guy because he's the bad guy. While Starro might just seem like a giant starfish that kills people with smaller starfish, there is some backstory added between Starro and their torturer, the Thinker. Plus Starro's last line, "I was happy, floating, staring at the stars," makes them a tragic figure. So mostly because of Ronan's lack of depth and the surprising amount about a giant starfish, Starro wins. Which movie had the better action? Gunn made an effort to put more practical effects in Suicide Squad for the action sequences, and it really pays off. The action feels more explosive throughout, and there are a few standout scenes. Guardians action is not bad, but tends to use a lot more CGI, and this can take away from some of the realness of the action. James Gunn has even talked about how he had learned a lot from doing Guardians and the CGI heavy effects associated with most MCU movies, and wanted to do something with a lot more practical effects for Suicide Squad. So, not to take anything away from Guardians, but I have to give the win to Suicide Squad. I am a sucker for practical effects. Mad Max Fury Road is one of my favorite movies. Finally, the stories. Both movies are incredibly straightforward. Each group needs to retrieve a valuable artifact from a place. And it is from this simple structure that both movies feel fast-paced and not bogged down with too much plot or exposition. But I think where Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 truly separates itself as the better movie from Suicide Squad is in the story. Guardians is able to give each of its 5 main characters enough backstory and depth that they don't feel one-sided, but actual fully formed people who go through something together. There are no wasted moments in the first Guardians movie. Every story beat has a purpose, and by the end, we've seen each of the 5 Guardians change and accept each other as family. Suicide Squad is great, it has its moments too, but when compared to the efficiency and potency of Guardians, it's clear which is the winner. James Gunn's unique creative vision is all over both Suicide Squad and Guardians. And I can't wait to see what he does with his overhaul of the DCEU, but I know I'll be buying my movie tickets. When Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 came out, I remember going to see it in theaters at least 4 times. And I remember seeing the first Suicide Squad in theaters too. Needless to say, I've only seen it once. Which makes it all the more incredible what James Gunn was able to do with the reboot. He took a franchise that was thought to be DOA and turned it back into something good again. Hopefully, he can do the same with the DCEU.
I hope so.